Illusion Park, The Magical Adventure of Michal and Dominik. One chilly mountain morning, the family had a single destination, mysterious and enticing, Illusion Park. A place where things are never quite what they seem, where imagination overrules the laws of physics, and where smiles appear on every face from the very moment you walk through the door. As soon as they arrived, the boys were already bouncing with excitement at the entrance. Michal and Dominik stepped inside with hearts pounding. Right at the entrance, they were greeted by enormous white wings, magnificent, as though they belonged to an angel guarding the gates of this magical place. Mum immediately pulled out her phone. "Stand right there," she called. The photo came out wonderfully. Two winged brothers ready for any adventure. Right beside the wings, a ball floated in midair. Just like that, levitating. Dominik squinted, walked all the way around it, and reached out a finger to check if it was some kind of trick. "How is it doing that?" he asked, wide-eyed. Mum smiled mysteriously. "That's the illusion, son. Your eyes see one thing, but reality is something else entirely." Michal, meanwhile, was immediately drawn to a huge suitcase sitting in the corner. It looked perfectly ordinary, but when he tried to lift it, it didn't budge a millimeter. "Dad, help!" he puffed, going red in the face. Dad grabbed the handle and nothing. The suitcase seemed glued to the floor by some invisible force. Both of them burst out laughing. A little further along, an enormous diamond sparkled, a crystal so vast that Dominik could have hidden behind it. It scattered light into thousands of colorful sparks. The boys stood still for a moment, mouths open. "Beautiful," whispered Michal, as rainbow reflections danced in his eyes. But the biggest burst of laughter was waiting at the table of heads. There stood a special table with cut-out holes. Stick your head through, and you looked exactly like a dish being served on a platter. Mum and Dad were the first brave enough to try. When they looked into the camera, they dissolved into laughter. They looked like a formal dinner served by an invisible waiter. Michal and Dominik were literally rolling with giggles. Our turn," they shouted over each other. And so the whole family took turns, each photo setting off a fresh wave of laughter. Then came the electric globe, Michal's absolute favorite. The boy brought his hands close to the metal sphere, and something hilarious happened almost immediately. His hair began to stand on end. One strand, then another, until his entire mop stood straight up like a startled hedgehog. "Michalku, you're a proper electrician now," laughed Mum, snapping photo after photo. The staff lady brought a special device close to the globe, and in an instant, Michal's hair floated gently back down. The boy giggled with delight. Meanwhile, Mum took Dominik by the hand and led him to the room of optical illusions. When you stood in exactly the right spot on the floor and looked at the scene, impossible things happened. Mum appeared trapped inside an enormous soap bubble, floating above the ground. Dominik stepped onto his spot and seemed to have shrunk to the size of a ladybird, sitting peacefully on the petal of a giant flower. "Mum, I'm tiny," he called with delight, looking around with the expression of an explorer discovering new worlds. In the meantime, Michal and Dad found their way to the puzzle room. There were wooden brain teasers, tangled metal rings, interlocking loops, and marble labyrinths. The boy got to work with the serious expression of a scientist. He tried once, twice, 3 times. Dad fell into deep thought too. Together they twisted and maneuvered, until finally something clicked and the puzzle gave way. Both threw their hands in the air as if they'd just scored the winning goal. "We did it!" shouted Michal triumphantly. But the true star of the entire park turned out to be the show about the Givaunt peak and lightning. The presenter told a dramatic story about summer storms assaulting the Tatra summits, bolts of lightning striking the rocks, and the awesome power of the mountains. The boys listened with eyes wide open as thunder rolled through the darkness and flashes lit up the model of the famous peak. "This is dangerous," said the presenter gravely. "Always check the weather forecast before heading into the mountains. The mountains are beautiful, but they demand great respect." Michal and Dominik nodded solemnly. At the very end, the boys stepped into the Halni wind cabin. When the machine started up, they felt a real, powerful blast against their faces. The kind that forces you to lean forward, ruffles your hair, and makes it hard to keep your balance. "This is the wind that can knock down trees," said Mum, holding Dominik's hand tightly. The boys felt the force of nature on their own skin, not in a book, not in a film, but truly here and now. They stepped out with ruffled hair and eyes full of newfound respect. When the family left Illusion Park, the boys simply could not stop talking. Questions came tumbling out one after another, and Mum and Dad answered patiently, because they knew that something important had just happened. Their sons, instead of sitting in front of a screen, had that day touched real knowledge, real wonder, and real joy.